everyone. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing part of your, let me get rid of this pop-up here. Thanks for sharing part of your Saturday with us. I just wanted to let you know that today we're going to go over techniques and we're going to be showing some tools. This is not a work-along class. And so if you are more interested in how to fully assemble a card, you might want to check out the beginner's card making class that my sister Mary did, and which is in the files group, the link to that video there. Because for the sake of time, we're not going to fully assemble any of the cards. So please ask questions in the chat. My sister Mary, thank you so much, is fielding those questions, and then we'll take questions at the end if there's anything remaining. So let's get crafting. Okay, hopefully I won't freeze up here. All right, are we working? Can I get a thumbs up? We moving? Okay, awesome. All right, so the first
Sorry
thing,
to break in. Can everybody in the upper right hand of your screen, you're going to see three dots. If you click on that and you click on pin on Mona's screen, you'll have it blow up and you'll see it on your entire page. Sorry about that, Mona.
no worries, that's important. And just so you don't think your computer is bad, you're only seeing half of my paper cutter because it's very big. So, but the first thing I want to start out with is how to make your own card bases. You can buy pre-made and pre-scored cards, but that gets to be a little expensive. So what I do is I buy a heavier weight cardstock. It's about, I believe, 85 pounds. Just your typical cardstock is about 65 pounds. So it's a little heavier, which gives it a little bit more substance in holding the card. So for an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, you want to cut that at 5.5. And here I'm just lining this up. I've got a big guillotine cutter here because I do a lot of quantity. I'm holding down these plastic things here that will help keep my paper in place. And I just go down. And so now I have 2 card bases. I'm going to move that out of the way. The next thing you need to do is score your card. Now, yes, of course, you can take the card and fold it like this and press on it, but that's not going to give you a very crisp fold, okay? So what you want to do is a score. This is called a scoreboard. And this tool here, it comes with this tool, is called a bone folder. And so what it is this scoreboard has a bunch of grooves in it that the bone folder fits in. And so I line up my card to the left here. And because this is 8.5 inches wide, I'm going to score it right in half, which is 4 1/4. Now, the easiest thing to do with this bone folder, leave a little bit of space up here on your scoreboard, stick the bone folder in the groove, and you want to put it kind of level. If you point it up, that point is going to punch a hole in your paper. So stick it in the groove and then just hold your card and just run it down like that. Now, when I started, I used to butt it up against the top there and then put it in here, but I found sometimes my bone folder kind of fell out of the groove. So I think it's much easier if you leave this little bit of space, get the bone folder in there and run it down. Now, this is a very difficult, let me pin that. Okay, so let me show you here. Do you see? There's a very subtle fold right there. This part of the fold is called the valley. It's going into the card. On the back, you can see the other side of the fold, and this is called the mountain. Okay? Now, what they say is you should fold into the mountain, because that is what reduces the amount of cracking on your spine of your card. So basically, you're just going to line it up here like so, and then I use my bone folder to just kind of run that crease through, just like that. And now you have a nice crisp card that stands up beautifully. Okay. Now, other options for the cutting. is a less expensive 12-inch paper cutter like this. What this arm comes out, if you are at all working with 12-inch decorative papers or anything like that, you need a 12-inch cutter. This is much more economical and space saving if you have a small space to work in. Okay, and then also another option for a scoreboard is this cute little mini one. I use this one when I travel and do crafting groups. And you can see it still has the same measurements, and it's just a little mini one. So lots of options for you, which can be found in those reference links in the document. All right, on to our first card. So our first technique we're going to do is we're going to create our own stencil using a die cut. Okay, the stencil was this oval shape in here. Whoops. All right, there we go. All right, so what I'm introducing here, this is a die cutting and embossing machine. Now, throughout this video, if I end up calling this the Big Shot, that's because that's the brand name of mine and I'm in no way promoting it. It's just by habit, so I apologize in advance. All right, in order to do your own stencils, you will need some die cuts. If you're limited on finances and you want to buy some die cuts, I would recommend things like this: ovals, circles, and when they come a bunch in a group like this, these are called nested. So you can cut a circle, or excuse me, you can cut the oval a smaller size, then cut the bigger size to mat it with a decorative paper or a colored paper around it. This is very economical and it can be used in a lot of different ways. So I have pulled out this size of an oval. Also, I want to tell you that at the end of this class, there will be a link to all of the instruction sheets for this class, because I'm not fully assembling the cards and I'm not going to be telling you measurements of things. They'll be all in the instruction sheets. Basically, we're focusing just on techniques today, what the possibilities are. So I'm going to make myself that oval template. So I have a white piece of cardstock here. And actually, let me tell you a little bit about this die cutting machine. So it comes with a base plate, and then each machine is different on what type of plates they have. Mine has this little thin plate, which is a thin die adapter. These are thin dies, so it needs a little bit more thickness in order to cut through the paper. Then typically you have two clear plates like this. One of them should always be designated for the cutting plate. You can see little scratches here. That's the die cutting through the paper and into the plate, okay? The reason I say designate one of them is so that they're not both all cut up, because eventually your cut plate, it'll start warping, and that's natural, okay? What you want to be sure to do as you're using your machine is regularly flip over, turn it over, use it in all different directions, and that will slow down the warping. Now, you can get a brand new set of plates for about $10 or $12. So they're fairly economical, and they do last quite a while as long as you're doing the flipping. All right, so we are going to place the die. I want it kind of on my upper part of my card there. Now, if you're working on precision for die cutting, sometimes you're just cutting a piece out of a paper and you don't care where it cuts. This one I want to be right there. So what I have found is very helpful is washi tape. And I had it started and then, okay. So washi tape is a very, it's used to craft with and make cards with, but I also like to use it to hold my dies in place. And that's because when, let's tear off two little pieces here. I'm gonna just put a piece right here to hold that there, and another one right there. That'll keep the die in place as it's being pushed through the machine and it won't move. Then once I peel it off, it's not going to tear my paper because washi tape is a very gentle type of tape. for lack of a better word. All right, I'm going to put my top plate on here. Now, for your particular machine, I suggest going to the manufacturer's instructions on what type of, this is called a sandwich. It's a sandwich of the various plates required to cut this particular die. So you just gently start it in there and you hold the top and you just roll it on through very gently. Very quite easy. If it's too hard to push through, then your sandwich is too thick. Okay, move that out of the way. Right. Now, I have an oval that I'm going to set aside and use for another card some other time. There's no waste, no waste. All right, you can see how this just gently comes off, like so. Okay.
You did? All right, let me check. Hold on.
All right.
An expensive text.
Like someone needs to mute themselves. Here's some back talking. Sounds like a mother. Here's some side chatter. Okay. So now I'm going to use I'm going to pull out a topper because we're going to make this cute little die or this shape here on the card. All right. Introducing a finger dauber. Okay. They come in packages. I get mine often at Hobby Lobby, 10 or 12 in a package. They come like this, nice and clean. And there's a hole in the end, kind of hard to see with black, and it just fits on the end of your finger, okay? Today, we're going to use it to shade in our stenciled area, but you can also use daubers to do what's called distress. So for example, if I have this piece that I want to put on top of my card, I ink this up and I just distress the ends, and it just kind of makes a smooth end. I believe that you would find that in the beginner's card making class video. All right, back to our stencil. Just place it directly over the sheet here. And because it's just one big sheet or one big stencil, I'm not going to worry about sticking it together because I'm just going to kind of hold it and do it gently. I'm going to open up my ink pad here. Let me actually put a piece of scratch paper under here. Okay, so I'm going to line that stencil up. Doing this with the dauber is like giving yourself a haircut. You start a little bit at a time. Once you cut it off, you can't get it back. So once you put the ink on there, it's not going to come off, you can't get it off. So you want to start very lightly. I just lightly tap on the ink pad, but then I kind of stamp it off on my scratch paper. You want to go with a gentle circular motion, just kind of over the die there. Kind of hold your edges as you're going around. Very gently. I want to be sure to butt up against the corners there so I get that defined image on my card. Now continue until you get the desired shade you want. You need it a little darker, ink up your dauber again, and just go very lightly until you get the desired shade you want. Which that will work out just fine. All right. So there we have kind of that shaded oval. Remember, that's our card there. Now I'm going to introduce a stamping platform. While this is not necessary in your arsenal, it sure is handy, especially if you're going to be making multiples of cards. Okay, so I'm going to use it in order to stamp this image. And the thing that is helpful with the stamping platform is it lines it up, and they come with these pretty hefty magnets. And oftentimes they come with two. Fair warning, do not get these magnets close together because they're very hard to get apart. The other little tip I'll share is I have a piece of a red tag hanging off here. That is actually duct tape, and that just gives me a little handle. It's a little bit easier to use. I first started using washi tape, but the magnet is so strong it kept tearing the washi tape off the magnet. So duct tape is, awesome. It's very tight. All right. So you place your piece of paper that you want to stamp, and I butt it up in the corner so it's nice and straight. I'm going to stick my magnet down here on the bottom, kind of out of the way of the where I'm going to stamp my image. Now, the nice thing about a platform is I'm going to go ahead and place my little bird here, my little Santa flamingo, where I want it to stamp. Then you close the top of the platform and you just press down, because that stamp is going to stick to the lid, in theory. Okay. Very nice. Okay. Let's try that one more time. Live TV, people. Okay. All right, nobody breathe. All right. So we're going to stamp that on there. I have found it easier using little stamping spots like this when I'm using my platform. Because if I use a big pad, I make a mess. I get it all over the place and it's just a mess. So if I find a stamp pad that I like, I also buy the refiller, the re-inker bottle, and then I make myself a little spot like this. You can buy these empty. We're going to go ahead and ink this up. And on purpose, I am not going to ink the whole thing very well, so I can show you the advantage of the platform. All right, so now we're going to go here. This is a really neat tool on the market. It's called a Stampendable. If you have any problems, arthritis, cramping in your hands, this helps provide an even pressure on the stamps and gives you a better stamped image, instead of going like this and then it hurts your wrists. And so that seems to help quite a bit. All right, we're going to take a look at that. And I know the image is not going to be great, because I wanted to show you the advantage to using the platform is this piece stays in place, my stamp stays in place. So I want to get that belt a little darker. All you have to do is add some more ink, close it up again. Press a little, and there you go. The ink's all inked up. So we do like to be able to go back and do that instead of starting all over again. I used, we want to clean our stamps immediately. This looks really hideous. It starts out this beautiful turquoise blue color, but this is a stamp chamois. It's just a chamois, which is no lint, and water. It's just wet. And all you do is, I have dye-based inks, and it just wipes off like that. Okay. So there you have your stamped image on top of the die cut area, or the stenciled area. I could have made it a little darker, just depends. So when you see this card, if you have, I added a few little snowflakes around, and I just did a spotlight coloring on his hat there. Okay. Now, what I want to also show you is how to do the tag. Now, there are punches that have, you can make a banner tag, this tag right here. But let me show you an easy way to do it by hand. So I have already put together the sentiment, okay? But I want to make it like that. I want to do like a little banner. So all you do is you take a little tiny little scissors here, you cut in the middle, just a little ways like that. And then from each end, you cut at an angle to that middle cut. And then you just take that out. And you cut at an angle. It just gives your sentiment strip a little bit more personality. All right. So that is creating a stencil using a die cut. All right, our next card we're going to do is the technique we're going to be using is double time stamping. Okay, so this is a flat card, so it'd be very easy to mail, and it actually uses only one kind of ink. So I'm going to also show you how to get a different color ink out of that. Okay. There are two pieces of paper here. You want to start with your top piece, which I've done here. I highly recommend that you stamp any sentiment first, because you don't want to go all the way through the trouble and time of stamping all these images. Then when you go to stamp your sentiment, there is either no room or somehow it gets messed up, and then the whole card's messed up. So I always stamp my image first, or excuse me, stamp my sentiment first. What you want to do is, so this is a card base that I have. What you want to do is you want to attach this little piece to the card base, because we're going to stamp over right directly onto the card base. But you need to kind of have it there permanently or semi-permanently. With a tape runner, just put a little bit of adhesive. I mean, very little. Like that. You can kind of see that shiny. But you can make it a little less sticky by just sticking it on your shirt or your pants a couple times to get a little bit of fuzz on there. That'll make it very easy to remove. I'm going to center this on my card base like so, and just gently push down where I have that adhesive. Okay, I'm going to pull in a scratch piece of paper in case I go over. Look at these images here. When you're stamping, you don't always have to have the full image on the card. So this one, it kind of hangs off. I think it adds a really nice look. It's not, exactly uniform. All right, we're going to start with the large image first, which is the snowflake. Yesterday when I was practicing, I kept calling it a snowflower. So, all right, we're going to ink it up, and I've got kind of a dark blue I'm using. And I'm going to put one right there and just press and hold. I'm using an acrylic block. When you're stamping with an acrylic block, just press and hold a little bit and allow time for the ink to transfer to the paper, like so. Now, don't worry so much about the incomplete stamp there, because the mat is going to cover that, and it's going to make it look like a continuous stamp. Put another one over here. Well, that one I didn't do very well at all. I'm going to ink it up really well. And then we go another one right there. Okay. Apparently I'm having a little trouble today. Okay. Now what we're going to do is the medium stamp. Click that off there. We're going to do the medium snowflake, and I'm going to show you. This is the one that looks like it's in a different color. We're going to use a technique called stamp off. Okay. I'm going to ink up this stamp. I'm going to, see, I mucked it up a little bit. That's another nice thing about the chamois. I could just take it and wipe off that excess ink on my block. We're going to ink up the stamp it off one time on scratch paper, and then stamp it on your project. And that gives you a lighter shade of the ink. Repeat that for as many times as you want to do the lighter shade. So if you don't have complementary colors of inks, you can have two different blues with just one ink color, because you're going to stamp off and make it a lighter shade. So once all of that is done, we're going to just stamp it all on. Then what you want to do is you want to adhere it to your card. So I have one here that I finished stamping, and when you adhere, and then I put it on the mat, the colored mat. You want to place it on your card so that the images are lined up. You can see here that leg there. For example, you wouldn't want it like this. See how it's not continuous and these aren't lined up. So you just line up the image, and then it makes it look like it was stamped in one continuous thing. Kind of a really neat effect, I thought. So then you want to adhere it to there. Okay. Now let's look at this card. There's one more thing missing. You see that shine? So in the Facebook group, I told you I would tell you the secret to my shine, and it's not glitter. So Kelly won't yell at us or the card angels. what that is are dazzles. And they are little stickers, and it's not glitter. It's just little kind of, they have a plasticky kind of texture. I would recommend getting a very fine tip tweezers to pull these off and place them on your projects. It's much easier. But they come in 3 sizes. There's a small, a medium, and a large. And all I did is I put a medium one in this inside the larger snowflake centers. In the resource, the links document that was given out when you registered, I gave the link to these. They're fantastic. They add you can sprinkle them around your cards. Just make sure you really press them in to make sure they're stuck to the page. But they come in a variety of colors. It's a gorgeous purple and a blue. So a lot of fun, and they go a long way. There's a lot of those in the package. Okay, what happens if you don't have stamps? Don't worry, I've got you covered. You can do the same technique, double time with paper. So this was made from a decorative piece of paper in the same fashion, and it gives you the same effect. See how the images continue throughout there. What you will need to do or have are rectangle dies. Again, very basic staple to have in your arsenal of dies, very usable. And I took this size here and I cut it out of the paper like so. So I cut the image out like that. And then I matted it with red. Put that card there. And then all you do the same thing. You line up the image and you glue it on. You first want to glue this onto the card, then you want to glue the top image. Much easier to handle that way. Now, you'll notice that I put this on a red cardstock. If you ever send in cards to Operation Gratitude, you want to make sure to use typing paper. I line the inside of my card with just 2 sheets of copy paper so that the receiver, when they send it, can write in it. Because this is too dark to write in. So I just easily adhere 2 pieces of copy paper into the inside of the card. So they have both sides to work on. Now, not all papers are the same for this technique. Here's a sample of a paper that I didn't think worked really well. And the reason is the design is small and it's far apart. Versus this one, the design, the main element is a little bigger and they're closer together. So you can see the continuity between the 2 layers. This one, not so much. This one works better for me. So that's just a little tip when you're selecting your papers. Awesome. All right. Off to the next card. What we are going to do here is called triple panel stamping. Okay. Let me give you a close-up of that. So that's a stamped image, and then it's cut into 3 little panels, like 3 little windows, and adhered to the card. Okay. Put that there. All right. I am going to pull a piece of scratch paper out. And we're going to use a block. Now, because this is not an image that is in the same place, I'm going to move the image around. I can't really use my stamping platform. So I have this, it's 2 trees, and I'm going to stamp it a couple times to make my image. By the way, all the cards I am making today are A2 size. All right, so I'm going to stick that to the block. Okay, I'm going to ink my fingers up. All right, I'm going to ink up the tree. And you can also do this with a continuous image, which I didn't, I'm trying to focus on Christmas cards for this class, and I didn't have a continuous image that big, so I'm going to make my own. But you can, if you have a long stamp, you can stamp it If it's longer than this piece of paper, that's okay. Just have a piece of scratch paper under it where it will stamp on, and you'll still have a beautiful image. But if you don't have that continuous image, we're going to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of start in the middle. Stand up here. And we're going to just press down. Like that. Right, now I'm starting in the middle so that I could go off each side off of the ends. If I start on one side, it's just gonna, I think it'll make it a little harder. I just find it easier to start in the middle. All right, so this one I'm gonna add a little dimension. I'm gonna come down a little and over. Now it's okay that the whole stamp is not gonna be on here. That's why I have this piece of scratch paper here. Because it just looks like the forest goes off to the side. All right, beautiful. And then one more for the other side. Come over here. Just like that. So now you have that image. And basically what you do, as you can see the card right there, is you, after this dries, you want to give it just a little bit to dry. It depends how inky your stamps pads are. And you want to cut it into 3 pieces. Now, don't worry, all the measurements are on the instruction sheets that you'll get at the end of this webinar. And what I did, because I did this ahead of time, and if you're going to make a lot of them, you might want to write on the back which panel goes where. So I've already cut one into 3 panels, and you mat it on the green paper there. Okay, just like that. One more little tip here. So I have, as you can see, I have the decorative paper and the green mat behind it. Let's save paper. We make a lot of cards for OG, so here's a little tip on saving paper. Do you see how this is matted here with green? So I have a die that cuts this shape. So I stamped my my sentiment already. And then I stamped another one, but I stamped this, or excuse me, I die cut this. I cut this out of the mat for the card. Let me show you, just like this. So this came out of here, okay? Because this mat is behind this decorative piece of paper, you don't see it. And you have saved yourself a piece of paper. I mean, it'll make the card a little lighter. It's just a great way to use all your paper and save you a little bit. So you have that there, it's matted on your card, and then you adhere these images kind of just equal distance apart. And I usually start with the middle one, adhere it, and then make sure everything's lined up like that. Okay, so it ends up looking like that. Do you notice this little green part here? What I did is I cut an extra shape in the green, and you cut it right down the middle like that. And then you stick a little bit hanging out on that end and a little bit hanging out on that end. It gives a little bit of a matting. So that's what it looks like on the back. See, I adhered a little bit to each side and stuck it on, and it kind of gives a great little matting without being all the way around. Excellent. Okay. Table, but wait, Mona, I don't have stamps to do the triple panel. Don't worry, I have you covered. You could do it with paper. Same recipe as far as measurements. Again, you want a design of a paper that has a big enough element that when you cut it into these little rectangles, which measure 1.5 by 2.25, there'll be some overlap, some continuation of the image. But that's just Christmas paper, and it has the same effect. Now, I just so happened on this, the red mat, I also embossed it. And we're gonna do the embossing folders a little later in the webinar. So again, showing you here an example. This is too small. These images are too small. There isn't much continuation. It just doesn't do anything to me for me. So again, not all papers are created equal for images for this type of technique, but you could very easily do it with decorative paper. All right, our next card we're going to do, we're going to get into embossing. Okay. So this is using an embossing folder. You can't really tell, but this is raised up. Let me show you the folder. This is an embossing folder. It's plastic and it literally is a folder, okay? And then it has, this color here. You can see the image. It has a pine cone and some greenery there. On one side of this folder, it's flat, so the image is pushed in, and on the other side, it's pushed out. So we are going to do what's called dry embossing. That just means, well, I guess there's nothing wet to it. So we're going to run it through the die cut and embossing machine that you have of your choice. Now, when making this card, just like stamping, I suggest stamping your sentiment first. Now, there's actually more reasons to do it for when you do embossing folder. There's always the question, do you stamp first or do you emboss first? And basically you stamp first, okay? I have some samples here. So here is a full coverage embossing folder. It has some hearts on it. I stamped, before I embossed it, I stamped this sentiment, have a wonderful day. And you can see it's great. And then the embossing, those raised images come through the paper. This is what happens when you emboss first and then you try to stamp. You have to realize these are all bumpy, so it's just not going to work. Then you don't get a good stamp because the stamp is not able to make full contact with the paper. One other tip before I show you the card is this. So this is a card base. You don't want to stamp or you don't want to emboss directly on the card front. You want to use a topper. So something that you're going to emboss on and then glue to the top of the card. And here's why. If you open up that card, it's all bumpy. So the person sending the card's not going to be able to write on that side because it's all lumpy and bumpy. All right, so I have my sentiment stamped. You place it in the folder, just kind of, I'm going to center, that's probably really hard to see. I'm going to center that branch in the upper left-hand corner so that it's right in the corner, kind of straighten it through there. Now, I remove my thin die adapter because this isn't a die, this is an embossing folder. What you want to do is you want to put the spine in first. So this is the closed end of the folder. Just gently put that on the platform, put your top plate on, and roll it through. It's going to give you that embossed image. Onto the paper. Just like so. So that's pretty, sure, that's pretty. But it can be prettier. We're gonna bring back our finger daubers. So I have a brown ink and a green ink. And this is the same system where you want to have a little piece of scratch paper because you want to go very slowly and gradually. You can always add more. So I'm gonna stamp that up and then just stamp it. I don't want it too dark, so I'm gonna stamp off on my scratch paper. Then you're gonna gently go over the raised image and it will color it. Now, if you get some ink off the raised image, that's okay. You can kind of see here when I did the pine needles, it kind of went off a little, but I like that effect. It's kind of a shadowing. It gives me kind of a watercolor feel. Not as gorgeous as Penny's watercolors, but it kind of gives a great effect. So you just want to rub it again in a circular motion. And then we're going to use green. Oh, I guess I could do these little branches here. Just like so. Just kind of gives it, lets it pop off the page. And then we're going to use some green. And again, light touch, circular motion. You can always go back and add some more. The objective is not perfection. Most art is not perfect, and that's what gives it its wonderful appeal. All right. Very simple there. Very simple touch. Now, you can see on this card, I've decided to mat it in red because that matched my stamp. And then again, the big thing that was taught in the beginner's card making class with Mary were these 3 little dots. It just kind of adds a little. I do happen to have a, you can do it with a pen. I have this little stick dauber, this little, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it has 3 dots. It's a stamp and it just does it all itself there. Very easy. That way I can do it in any color ink to match if I don't have that pen. So that is coloring an embossed image with a dry embossing folder. Fantastic. All right. Our next card we're going to do is another embossing card. I've seen this one in one of the posts I put on the Facebook group. This is going to be our messiest, and that's why I left it for last, or second to last anyway. This is not decorative paper. It's blue, and then these are white. This is a white piece of paper, and it's colored. It's run through an embossing folder. So the embossing folder I'm using today is a snowflake. Let me use this again here. It has snowflakes all over it. This technique works really well with an embossing folder that has an image all throughout, like a solid color or solid images there. Okay. The thing you're going to need when you do this technique is a brayer. We are going to get messy, so I'm going to put my little pad down here. That's easy to wipe up if I get ink on it. Okay. Camera seems a little crooked. There we go. All right, this is called a brayer. It's just a rubber roller here. And I'm going to use Tempting Turquoise, this beautiful turquoise ink. If you want to do this technique, so this is an inked embossing folder, you need to have the larger ink pad. You can't use one of these little tiny ink pads to ink up the brayer, because what you're going to end up seeing is the start and the end of the ink pad. Because if you go like this, it doesn't work as well, versus a large ink pad that you just roll continuously on there. Get my machine set up here so it's ready to go. All right, I have my card topper. So this is what is now the blue piece. When you're inking an embossing folder, again, as I showed you earlier, there's 2 sides to an embossing folder. There's a smooth side and a raised side. So literally that image is raised on there. You want to put the ink on the smooth side. Open up my ink pad. Just take your brayer and get coverage on your ink on your brayer there. See how it's continuous coverage like that? Put that to the side, and then you just roll it onto to cover your folder. Get a little more over here. Get some good coverage there. It's okay if you get a little bit on the back side. I'm going to close this up. Disaster. All right. Here's the topper. You want to carefully place on the bottom side, so the non-inked side. And I'm going to kind of line it up in there. Move this. Bring in my machine here. All right, then you want to gently close the folder. Try not to move the paper. Again, you want to put the folder in spine first, the closed part of the folder. Just gently put it in there. I'm keeping my thumb here just to keep it in place. And go ahead, put that through the machine. And it gives you a gorgeous, little wet. So again, this is the messy one. Piece of paper. Look how sharp that is. And then all I did, of course, is I matted it and put it on white cardstock and put a sentiment on the top. Now you got some inkiness to clean up. I just use my stamp chamois. And again, all you do is rub it real well. After cleaning up a big ink like this, you might want to just take it to the sink. A little bit right there. I take both my folder and the stamp chamois and the brayer to the sink and just wash it off, rinse them off. The stamp chamois is great. It's stained, but it doesn't come off on your hands. I mean, it will now because all the ink is very fresh on there. So then I'll go run it through and squeeze it and rinse it and squeeze it and rinse it. And you can see, you got to love it because you do get a little messy. You do get a little messy. Now, whenever you adhere an embossed topper like this, especially if it's a full image, you need to use a little bit stronger adhesive. If you have a tape runner, it's not going to be strong enough. And that is because the back side of that paper is not flat. So the adhesive is not making a very good contact with the card base or the mat that you're sticking it to. So I tend to use a liquid glue. This is my favorite. It can get a little stringy, but it goes a long way. If you use any liquid glue, make sure it is made for paper because otherwise it ripples your paper. But this gives a good, strong adhesive to an embossed card like that. All right. Well, it looks like we have time to do one more card. Mary is going to post in the chat links to the instruction sheets. I realize we didn't go through measurements. We didn't, fully assemble any cards, but today we're just discussing techniques. But I did make, if you're interested in making those cards, I have an instruction sheet for each of the cards you have seen today. Okay, we're gonna, here I'm going to introduce to you, they're called, so if you don't have markers, you don't want to invest in markers, but you want kind of this look, that, okay, there we go. That looks colored in. Again, it reminds me a little bit of watercoloring. It's not perfect. It's not supposed to be. You can purchase what's called they're called two-step stamps or color layering stamps. And way you can tell, this is the one I'm using today. You can tell it's a two-step stamp. Either it's going to say it, color layering or whatever, or it's going to have an image like this. This is the outline of the poinsettia. This is the filler, okay? The filler of the poinsettia. It's going to give me the coloring in the poinsettia. This is going to give me the coloring for the leaves. So even though it's two-step stamps or color layering, there might be more than one stamp that's going to add color to your image. I would suggest starting with something that is only two-layer just to get used to it. Basically today, I'm just going to show you how a few of the tips to line up these types of stamps. So this is an acrylic stamp. Again, you can use a stamping platform, but for today's purposes, we're just going to use an acrylic block. I'm going to peel. You want to start with the outline. So this is the outline stamp. If you notice here, there's an angle to all the stamps, and this particular stamp set has a little mark right here that orients the stamp. So whenever you put it on the block and you stamp it on your paper, that's the direction, that part of the image you want to have pointing down. Okay, so we're just gonna stick this on the block. I've got just a piece of scratch paper here. And we want to stamp. You usually stamp your image, the outline image, in a dark color. So I'm using black. See, stamped up. Stamp it right there. Now, the advantage to having clear stamps, these are clear acrylic or photopolymer stamps, is you can see through the block. Yep. Let me see here. Trying to line that up. Going a little too fast. All right. Well, again, not perfect. All right. Now we're going to use the filler stamp and line that up to color the insides of my flowers. Basically, you just need to look for a distinctive shape to orient your stamp. So again, with an acrylic block, I can kind of turn it until it lines up. And right there, it's lining up pretty good. So this is going to be at the top. Get my red. Keep in mind, this is supposed to be a full outline. All right, see how I'm lining up? I'm going to move that. See how that's lining up there? And you just stamp and hold, press and hold. And then that colors the inside of your flower. Now, this particular stamp set also has a green. It has a stamp set for the a filler stamp for the leaves. Well, we're going to pull this one off. I'm going to put this on my block. And then before I ink it up, I'm just going to kind of figure out, okay, you see how that's lining up there? It's not like that. It's might be a little hard to see, but you just want to line up the leaf impressions, the filler, with the outline. So we're going to ink it up with green. Line up your stamp. Again, this is not a perfect technique. Some of the coloring is going to overhang. I was a little off, but in the end of things, it doesn't matter. It, again, is kind of a watercolor, sketchy kind of look. I should say sketched, not sketchy. So anyway, you could do some beautiful things with these two-step stamps. If you're using your stamp platform, what you would do is you would go through and let's say you want to make 10 of these cards. You would first stamp all the outlines. You put the paper on there, stamp the outline, and then you would bring the first one back and you'd position your filler, and then you would stamp that one on all of them. So those stamping platforms make things really easy. Okay, so that's it for card making. But before I turn off the document camera here, I want to show you guys how to send your cards in to Operation Gratitude. There are card angels in the warehouse, and they look at every single card that we send. And they look at them for a number of reasons. What the top is, you know, because they sort cards and give each care package, you know, 4, 5, 6 cards, and they want to have a variety in there. They want to make sure there's no notes inside, because that goes into a different area, our notes of gratitude. And then basically they just check for things like glitter, any religious content or stamp. You know, we don't want any of that stuff. So when you put your cards, you complete the card, and you have an envelope for each card, please, okay? And the inside of the card is blank. This one, that's a very light inside, so I probably wouldn't line it, but you can line it with paper. You stick your card just inside the flap like that, and then you just stack them in your box, okay? This gives the card angels very quick access. Yep, it's a Christmas card, it's blank, there's nothing, you know, it's good. And then, so that's how they inspect them all, okay? Please be sure, again, not to use any glitter or rhinestones. Rhinestones are very pokey and can poke an envelope. That's why those dazzles I showed you earlier are awesome. They're flat, they add a little pizzazz, it's great, okay? Do not rubber band your cards. If you put a rubber band around here, it damages the envelopes. So some, you know, if you put a stack and then you rubber band it, it damages the envelopes. Let's see, if you have thick embellishments are fine. Just make sure, do a test that it fits in the envelope. You want to make sure that it fits in the envelope, because they're going to have to put it in the envelope to mail it. So make sure you do a test, but do not leave it in the envelope, then just kind of put it in the flap like that. And then let's see, lastly, if you are mailing a box that has the general cards, thinking of you, I love you, I miss you, but then you're also going to throw in, you know, 25 birthday cards and maybe 25 anytime cards. The anytime cards are those without a sentiment. You can separate those in the box by either using just kind of a bag or a paper band, and that would help the card angels on the other end. Not completely necessary, but you can do that. And then for the Christmas card call to action, the Christmas cards are due before the end of October, I believe. If I'm wrong, Kelly can correct me. They like the Christmas cards in the warehouse before all the Halloween candy starts coming in. But if you have an entire box full of Christmas cards, on the outside of the box, then please just mark in Sharpie Christmas cards. That way, it's very easy for them to, you know, prioritize that box of cards, because they're going to be very quickly putting together those Christmas boxes for our troops. Let's see, I think that's it on what I have to share today, although I have so much more, but I only have an hour. Let's just see now if we have any other questions. And let me switch my camera here. All right. Mary, did we have any questions that I need to address? I'm sure you were probably able to handle them all.
No, we didn't have any that I couldn't address. Debbie said that the first thing that you did was the scoring of the cards, made it was worth her time here, because she didn't realize how it was, right, Debbie?
That does my heart good. That makes me happy. Thank you.
That whole tip of starting it down a little bit.
Oh,
'Cause
I
that's
have gone.
cool.
Yeah, I have veered off more times than I can count. So yes.
I like your tip about the 3 panels. If you don't have stamps, to use paper, because a lot of us don't have stamps.
Yeah.
Paper is just the easiest thing to purchase, so really a good idea.
Exactly, and there are so many things you can do creatively with the paper. So I was happy to incorporate that and show both ways.
Did you say that you could use markers instead of ink on your stamps? That kind of went over my head.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Penny. If you have a stamped image that you want to color, yes. No, but again, not all markers are the same. So you need to figure out kind of a blending type of marker. Again, a dye-based marker, colored pencils. My sister
Alcohol ink?
Margaret,
Alcohol
Yeah.
ink marker?
alcohol ink marker, I believe so. Would that be right, Mary?
I've never really used markers on my stamps.
Yeah, you want to test first, because the problem or the thing to consider is what you are stamping your image with. If because I use this Memento Tuxedo Black to stamp an image that I'm going to color, and I use dye-based markers, and it does not smear the black ink. So you have to pair up the correct base of ink with whatever marker you want to use.
Are your inks all water-based dye?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see.
90?
Hi, Mona. I have a question. When you roll the ink on the folder, do you put it on the smooth side or the one have the indentation part?
Okay, you put the ink on the smooth side.
Ink smooth, okay.
Yeah, not the part that has the raised. Because
Okay.
so basically you're putting it on the part that has the indentions, like inside, it's smooth. Because there are the two sides of the folder. One side is very bumpy. You do not put it on the bumpy side.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
fabulous. I loved it.
Oh, thank you, everyone. This is really just the tip of the iceberg.
And what you do with the watercolor is line and wash. Your watercolor things look what's called line and wash.
Line and wash, that's awesome. It's kind of neat. You can get a watercolor technique without, in a different way, right?
Right.
So again, so many things, and I just didn't have enough time. But I hope, you got a little nuggets from here. Happy to answer any questions as the weeks go by, and if you get into those instruction sheets and they don't make sense, just please reach out to me on Facebook, message me, whatever. Happy to help. So, and I just thought, this is my happy place. I'm in my happy place, and when my son moved out of college, I asked him if I could make his room into a craft room. So I'm very blessed to have all my stuff up here, and I love this place. So I always put cards that are given to me, you can see, and anyway, so crafting makes me happy, and doing it for Operation Gratitude makes me even happier. So
Can somebody confirm what the date is for the Christmas cards?
October 30th, they should be in the warehouse by October 30th.
All right, everyone, it's a little bit after 10. I know Mona is now going to go and probably drink because she's probably exhausted by it all.